Hey YouTube, today we're back at it with another video. Today's video is part 4 of the series of the SQL injection lab that we have been developing over the last couple of weeks. This video will cover the configuration and installation of both Apache web server, PHP, and then we will get into developing the PHP files and the HTML files in order to build that web application that we are going to attack on the last video, which is the next video. Right, so with that being said, don't forget to leave a comment below, subscribe, like, let me know what you think about this series so far, but let's get started. So the first step that we are going to take is going to be installing the Apache web server on this Linux machine. So in order to do that, sudo apt-get install, and then we're going to use Apache 2. Just go ahead and let that run for a minute. So now that the Apache has finished installing, what I like to do is just verify that everything is installed and that the service is running. So we're going to go ahead and run sudo system control status of Apache 2, I keep saying it weird. So here you can see that the system is active and it is running. Alright, so now we know that that is running. What I also like to do is just verify that the folders have been created. This will also help you understand where the HTML files and the PHP files will be stored. So we go ahead and head over to var www and HTML. As you can see here, with installing the Apache web server, we have already an index.html file inside of this directory. So if we headed over to the Firefox and loaded up our local host, it should pull up this index.html. So let's just go ahead, and there you go. So this is telling us that the Apache web server has been installed and it is running, and this is the default configuration page if you were to run this on your machine as well. Alright, so now that we verified that that works, we're going to go ahead and install the PHP files that we need. So the first one, we're just going to go ahead and sudo apt-get install PHP. We'll go ahead and let that run for a minute. Alright, so PHP is installed, and then one more thing that we have to install. Pretty much the library for PHP from what I understand. Go ahead and let that run for a minute. Alright, so same thing as we did with the Apache web server, we're going to go ahead and verify that PHP is installed. And in order to do this, we could create pretty much a web page inside of this directory. So we're going to name it, info.php. Then inside of here, we're going to specify it's a PHP file. We use that built-in function, and then we're going to close it out. So now if we head over to our web browser again, and then we will just do info.php, and there we go. So now we have verified. This will also tell us the version, different information about the Apache on this web server. Alright, so now we know that PHP is installed. The next step that we want to do is go ahead and start creating the HTML file. So I am no front-end developer, so we're just going to create a simple HTML web page that's going to contain a login web application, essentially, that will connect to the PHP files and authenticate with the backend SQL server that we had created yesterday or last week. Alright, so we're going to name this login.html, and we're just going to kind of go line by line. So to create an HTML file, this is how the verbs that you're going to need. Sorry, that should be head, and then we're just going to name a title here. So this will show up in the browser, and we'll just say user login form. Nothing crazy. Alright, so after doing that, we're going to close out the head. Then you want to specify the body. This is where the login form is going to take place. I'm going to break that in half by specifying so now we're going to create the form. So we're going to use h1 for the header or the title pretty much. So we're going to say login. Now we're going to name the form and actually create the form. So form name. This is the action, so this is what's going to take place, or what the form is going to pretty much work with. So we're going to do Authentication .php. So when we submit a request, it's going to send those values to the Authentication.php file. Then we got to specify on submit. And the method obviously is going to be post, because we are going to be posting those values. And then below here, we're just going to create the form, essentially, like the actual text area for the user to input text. So the first one we're going to do is username. Then after that, we want to actually specify the input type. The ID is going to be the user, so this is going to be important. Make sure that you guys understand what this ID is, because this is what is going to be passed from one form to the next. Again, I am not a professional in this. This is something that I just set up in order to, again, practice this lab. Alright, the next one that we're going to do is create another label for password. And then we're going to do the same thing for the input type. Sorry, this is going to be password, not text, because you don't want the clear text on there. Again, the ID is important. Make sure you remember the ID. ID is pass. And I messed up. Close that out. Close the P out. Paragraph. And we're going to do one more for the submit. So this is going to be the submit button. And that's pretty much it for this file here. We'll close out the form. Then we're going to close out the body. And then close out the HTML file. If I could type. Alright, and that's it. So let's go ahead and verify that this file was set up correctly. We'll view it in the web browser. Again, so anything that is listed inside of this directory here, these files, we'll be able to see in the browser. So now instead of info.php, we're going to head over to login.html. And there we go. So this was the header that we specified. This is the form. Yet the first one is username and password, and then a login, which is going to do nothing right now. Alright, so as you can see, after we click submit, it is in fact looking for the authentication.php file, saying that the requested URL was not found. So let's go ahead and create that real quick. So again, in the same directory, I'm sure I'm going to do some errors here with the spelling, and we'll have to come back and figure that out. Alright, so for PHP, you're going to specify it with that syntax right there. We're going to do include. So this is what we're going to create as the next file is going to be the connection file. This file is what is going to be used in order to connect to the backend server, the SQL server. But we will do that next. Then we're going to specify the variables. So username equals Then you want to do the $sign. You want to specify the method of post, and then the ID that we had specified on the previous file. Sorry, this is going to be square brackets. And then you close that out. Don't forget that semicolon. We're going to do the same thing for password. I keep hitting enter. Alright, so now that we had created those two variables, the next one that we're going to do is create another one, which will be the SQL query. So we're going to say SQL. And if you remember from the second video, this might look pretty familiar. Select all from user where username equals variable username and password equals password. So essentially that's going to be a query that's going to select, and we're going to use this to authenticate in the login form. So only where the username and password matches the username and password inside of the database. But we're going to build that now. Just some more syntax for the authentication and verification. So we're going to do result equals so this is essentially what we're going to be using in order to connect. Then we're going to do count. This is what's going to give us our response based on if it finds a value. Just remember, we are creating a vulnerable web application, so that none of this is the right way to do it. This is the basic way that you may see out there in the real world and allowing us to attack these services. Alright, so now we're going to do a function if the count variable is more than 1 essentially, or if it is 1, saying that these variables matched the username and password inside of the database, then do something. So we're going to say if count equals 1, saying that it found a match, do this. So we're going to say, we'll just do we'll do this. We'll just say login success, I guess. That should be fine. It's not a big deal. Center. And close out the H1. And that's it. And then we want to ooh, too far. We'll just do it here. Then we want to specify else. So do something else. I must have hit the... There we go. And then we're going to say echo login failed. Make sure we close that out. And then we got to close out. I think there's one more, right? Yeah, I messed up the quotes again. Somehow I keep deleting them or something. Alright, so we close out that one. Yep, so that closes out the else, and then we just gotta close out the PHP file. And that's that. So real quick, again, this is going to be the variables that are getting passed from the HTML file. This is going to be the SQL query, searching the database, verifying that this username up here matches this username and the password matches this password. We're going to connect to that. Then we're going to count to make sure that one matches. If it does match, we're going to say login success. If it doesn't match, login failed. We can't really test this one out yet because we are including that Connection PHP, otherwise it would fail right now. So let's go ahead and create the Connection.php. Alright, so first things first, before we create that file, we're going to want to, or I just want to explain this. So in this file, we are going to need to specify the host, which is going to be localhost, the user, which will be root, and then the password, which is going to be the password that you used in the part 3 of this video when we created that, the last video when we created that the SQL database. It's gonna be the same. It's gonna be the same password that you would use right here. Alright, and then inside of here you also want to take note of the database that we had created, and we are using YouTube Lab. If you use something else, just make sure that you take note of that, and that's what we're going to use in this file. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and vim authentication connection .php, and we're going to do the same thing as far as the syntax goes. Specify the PHP, that it is a PHP file. We're going to create some variables. So again, host is localhost. Now if this was an external on a different server, then you would obviously specify that here, but for this lab, this is what we will be using. The user will be root. Password, I made up some crazy long password, and that's going to be this right here. I keep forgetting to close it out. The DB name, the database name. So YouTube Lab. Alright, now we want to specify another variable, con, which is what we had in the Authentication.php file, if you could remember. This could all be pulled up also on the SQL documentation. This is all laid out pretty well. So inside of those, we're going to pass a few parameters. So obviously we're going to pass host, user, password, and database name. And that's pretty much it. And then the last line that we want to do is we're going to pretty much say, to help us with troubleshooting purposes, we want to know if it has failed based on authenticating with that database. Alright, so we're going to say die failed to connect I forgot to put the quotes. And that's it. And then we just want to close out this PHP file again. Sorry, that's the wrong way. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and just save this real quick. I forgot to run sudo, so I cannot save it in a readme only version. So 1 second. Alright, so now we had saved it. So again, this is the variables that we're going to be using to authenticate with the SQL server that we had created on week 3. And then down here, it's just a quick line to help us troubleshoot whether or not we can connect to that database. So let's go ahead. A way to test our connection is we're just going to go ahead and view this page. Well, we can just leave it like this for now. We could view this page in the browser. So we'll go to connection.php. So that is pretty much saying that we are now authenticated inside of that SQL backend server. Just to prove it, just to show you and so you understand what I'm trying to say. So if we change this database name to something that is not correct, save that and refresh, we should get an error. And this is what you should see if you have authenticated. There is no error. But with that being said, I did forget to mention one other installation that you need to perform. Otherwise, none of this will work and it will drive you crazy. So I do apologize. So do this now. So you want to go ahead and install php-mysql. I already have it installed. I just totally forgot to mention it in the I had it in my notes but didn't say it in the video. With that being said, at this point, if you already got this far, go ahead, after you do that, go ahead and restart the Apache service. So system and that will load the PHP module into there, the PHP MySQL module into the Apache server, and that should be it. So with that being said, just to highlight again that connection.php, so we're going to go ahead and go in there again. In here we want to create a password that is not correct, just to highlight exactly what would happen. And that's that. So that's showing you that you had failed to connect to the SQL server, the access denied for user root at localhost using password yes. There you go. So now we had verified that connection.php works, and let's just verify that we could now authenticate using the login form that we created. First, let's go ahead and fix that real quick. Let's head over to the browser again, and then this time instead of going into connection, we're going to actually go to the login form. So if we put a fake bad username, we should see login failed. Alright, so that's exactly what we would want to see, but I did also find one more error. I apologize. Again, I am not perfect at this. I just went through it very quickly. So if you go back into sudo vim authentication.php, two things that I found that I messed up. I should have just proofread it. So I did not put semicolons at the end of these statements, the echo statements, which is obviously needed after every statement. And then I also had an extra curly bracket here. If you do run into any errors where there's just a blank page appearing after you try logging in, make sure you just verify that the PHP files are all correct. But this is the final product. If you want to go ahead and just verify yours looks exactly like mine. And now I will prove it to you that everything works. So let's go back to the Login.html file. Again, we'll put bad credentials. We should get login failed. Now if we supply the credentials that we created last week on week 3, which was Jack and a password of 1234 on the SQL server, we should get login success, and there we have it. So one last thing, I just want to show you guys the database again to remind you guys where that credentials came from. So if we went into the Mysql database, we're going to use the YouTube lab database, and inside of there we're going to say, what is it, show tables first. We'll say select all from user. I don't know why that just lagged. And those are the credentials that we are using in our login form. So with that being said, those are the two that we could log in without any hacks or anything like that. Next video, we will go ahead and authenticate without supplying the username and password through a variety of methods, including manual and some tools like I mentioned in week 1. I also would like to just pull up the other files real quick so you guys have a final product for those two errors that I had pulled up. So just so you guys could pause here if you need to. This is the final authentication.php file. And then we got connection.php file. And that's really it, aside from the login.html file. Alright, so that's going to close out this video. I had a lot of fun with this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Again, there was a few errors, but I did clear those up. I gave you guys every step of the way. So every time I do these videos, I try to uninstall everything that's involved and pretty much start from square one so you guys can see the entire process when you're going through it. Sometimes I just forget. I might miss a thing here or there, but I did fix it. I provided you guys with the final product so you guys could pause and watch and fix yours as well. With that being said, the video following this one, it should be the following week. We will actually be exploiting that web application that we had just developed today. It will be super fun. I will provide you guys with a number of ways on how you could authenticate without providing a username or password, and some cool tools out there that are used pretty much daily for the penetration testers and stuff like that. Again, hope you guys learned something today. Please leave a comment below, drop a like, subscribe, show some love, and as always, never stop learning.